Sonny Red, Big Trin, and Philly Lucky all lay dead in a pool of their own blood, gunned down in an ambush planned by Big Joe Massino. But there was one more person shot on the 5th of May 1981 in the basement of the Gravano-owned 2020 nightclub in Brooklyn. And here's the story. Welcome to OC Shorts, bringing you detailed historical snapshots of the American Mafia and other organised crime. Feel free to subscribe if you enjoy this sort of thing. Today, we're going to be taking an in-depth look at the infamous three capos hit. In 1981, tensions were high in the Bonanno family. Yet again, it looked like they were on the brink of another civil war. As you're probably aware, two factions emerged. One side was loyal to imprisoned boss Philip Rusty Rastelli and included Joe Massino and Dominick Sonny Black Napolitano. The other, who were looking to overthrow Rastelli, were the Genovese-backed rebel faction led by Alphonse Sonny Red Indelicato and included fellow capos Philly Lucky Giaccone and Dominick Big Trin Trinchera. Some sources argue that there was actually a third faction within the family made up of the Sicilian Zips, whose loyalty really remained only to each other and to their counterparts in the Montreal branch of the Bonanno family. However, in this case, they threw their support behind Rastelli. The commission ruled that the two sides had to sort out their disagreement peacefully. No bloodshed was the order that Gambino boss Paul Castellano gave to Massino. And it appears that after his initial backing, Genovese boss Vincent Gigante gave the same order to an angry Sonny Red, allegedly telling him, "You don't understand, if you go to war, we'll kill all of you on the spot. End of story." And so, a series of peace talks took place. The first on February 4th, 1981, at the Ferncliff Manor, and a second meeting was held at the Brooklyn Embassy Terrace. This location wasn't far from a bar owned by Frank Lino, a Bonanno soldier in the rebel faction. Sonny Red was bracing himself for all-out war and began stocking up weapons and storing them at Lino's bar. Tutti Francesi, a Colombo soldier, informed Massino that Sonny Red's guys were out there buying up automatic weapons. Massino took this new information back to Gambino boss Paul Castellano and also Colombo boss Carmine Persico. The excellent book Sixth Family says that Massino went to these two commission members for their advice and asked them if his hands could be untied with regards to him and his men defending themselves. Castellano told Massino, "Do what you have to do." A third peace meeting was then scheduled for the 5th of May 1981 at Sammy the Bull Gravano's 2020 nightclub in Brooklyn. Sources indicate that Sonny Red was on high alert. He feared that this meeting might be an ambush, and so he ensured that his son, Anthony Bruno Indelicato, was not in attendance, and instead planned to take Frank Lino with him. Lino, who would later in life turn informer, recalls that before the meeting, Sonny Red spoke to him and told him there was a chance that they might all be killed. Sonny Red then gave the order to his son Bruno that should he not return from the meeting, Bruno was to kill all of the Zips, Joe Massino and Sonny Black. The night of the meeting, Sonny Red's men were spread all over the city in case the Massino faction planned a mass purge. There were also some in Staten Island and some with Thomas Karate Patera in Brooklyn. Sonny Red then told Lino and the other two rebel captains, Phil Lucky Giaccone and Dominick Big Trin Trinchera, that if there was shooting, everybody's on their own, just try and get out. Over at the 2020 nightclub, the ambush was being set. Joe Massino had picked his brother-in-law, Sal Vitali, to be one of the shooters. Due to the fact that Massino and Vitali, much like Frank Lino, would later become informers, we are able to piece together exactly what happened that night. Vitali later recalled that upon arrival at the club, Massino introduced him to the other shooters who had been brought in from Montreal. These included Vito Rizzuto, Emmanuel Ragusa, and someone that Vitali refers to as the old-timer, who was around 65 to 70 years of age. The relationship between the Montreal faction of Bonannos and the guys in New York was a complicated one. Essentially, the Montreal guys walked their own path and would eventually become known as the powerful Rizzuto family. Essentially, they were just the Sicilian Mafia operating in Canada rather than the American Cosa Nostra. But this is a story for another day. Vitali and his other shooters had then put their masks on and hid in a closet with the door slightly ajar. Jolando George from Canada Sciascia then told them that if he saw Sonny Red at the meeting, he would put his hands through his hair as a signal to come out. The plan was to make it look like a hold-up so they could line everyone up against the wall and have a nice, neat execution. Frank Lino remembers that when he, Sonny Red, Philly Lucky and Big Trin arrived at the club, they were greeted by Massino, George from Canada Sciascia, and a Zip Bonanno soldier called Santo Tony Giordano. Giordano then told them that they're just getting everything ready upstairs and it would just be a few minutes. Everyone then cordially started to mingle. Frank Lino recalls seeing Sonny Red hold on to Massino's arm as if in friendship, but most likely to stay close to Big Joe in case any shooting started. Phil Lucky was out the back talking to Joe Ziccarelli, and Lino was talking with Big Trin, George from Canada Sciascia, and Nick the Battler Di Stefano. It was then that George Sciascia ran his fingers through his hair. The four gunmen burst out the closet, Vito Rizzuto yelling, "It's a hold-up!" When Big Trin saw the guns, he charged at them. Vitali remembers Vito Rizzuto shooting, but Rizzuto claims that he never pulled his trigger. Regardless, Big Trin went down. Joe Massino then knocked Sonny Red down with an object, and Phil Lucky was in the back helpless and was quickly gunned down. Gunshots were ringing out everywhere. Frank Lino reacted fast. He knocked down George from Canada, leapt over Big Trin's dead body, flew past Vito Rizzuto and the old-timer and bolted through the exit, and he just kept running. Vitale later said that he then saw Sonny Red, who'd been shot in the back and the side, crawling towards the door. George Sciascia then casually pulled out a gun and shot Sonny Red in the left side of his head. So, who is this fourth person who was shot? Santo Tony Giordano, who had greeted Lino and the three capos when they arrived, had caught a bullet in some friendly fire during the ambush. He was rushed out of an exit and driven to his uncle Gaspar Bonventra's apartment. Meanwhile, his fellow Zips went to the house of Dr. Edward Salerno, who happened to be Giordano's doctor. Dr. Edwards was surprised when his doorbell rang at 11 p.m. Answering in his pajamas, he was greeted by another Zip soldier who handed him $500 in cash, told him it was an emergency, and then ushered him towards the car. On entering the car, Dr. Salerno found himself sat next to Cesare Bonventra. Dr. Salerno, upon treating Giordano, realised that his patient was in a far worse state than his fellow gangsters had believed. Despite Giordano's protests, Dr. Salerno called for a private ambulance to take Santo to a hospital where he was rushed into surgery. Despite managing to stop the bleeding, Santo Giordano was paralysed and would never walk again. Word of the mobster's shooting reached the FBI, and while Giordano was recuperating in hospital, he was visited by FBI agent Carmine Russo. Despite his paralysis, Giordano was cool and cocky under questioning, sticking to the code of the street. "I heard you had some trouble," said Agent Russo. "Me? Oh, this is nothing," replied Giordano. He then told Agent Russo that he took a bullet in an argument over a car parking spot, but that he couldn't remember where it happened. Santo Giordano was actually involved in another famous mob hit. He was the driver of the car that carried Dominick Trinchera, Bruno Indelicato, and Russell Mauro to Joe and Mary's Italian-American restaurant when they went in and whacked Carmine Gigante. Giordano had stayed with the car while they were inside, watching the street with a rifle in hand. Giordano's luck didn't improve after being shot. He was known as a skilled mechanic, and he ran a workshop and a gas station in Queens, and in his spare time he was a pilot. In 1983, the paraplegic Giordano died in a plane crash at Bayport Edwards Airport. He had purchased a plane, an Aero Commander, 8 years previous, and had been working on it to make it look like a 1950s model. On its maiden flight, witnesses said they saw it roll over and come down hard, killing Giordano and his co-pilot Ralph Wheeler, who was 62. Giordano was 40 years of age. As for Frank Lino, once he'd eventually stopped running, he came in for peace talks the next day. He was picked up by George Sciascia and Nick the Battler Di Stefano. They all talked about Lino's miraculous escape. George told Lino that when they were in the basement, he deliberately put an arm on him to ensure that he didn't get away, and that they planned to kill him as well. Nick the Battler then looked at Lino and, referencing him running off, said to him, "Don't ever do that again. If you gotta die, die." Thanks for watching.